Hey everyone, I am Tyler Linneber, the branch leader for ACC Denver and ACC Mines in Colorado. Go Colorado! This afternoon, I'm here to introduce an exciting panel about state-level advocacy. I was fortunate enough to work with ACC Action to pass a bill in Colorado to classify nuclear energy as clean. And I hope you can all get involved with your states as well to pass some great legislation. And now I'd like to welcome ACC President Chris Barnard back up to stage, and along with his esteemed panelists. Thank you.
Great to see you all. Long time no see. Thanks for being here. I'm really excited about this particular panel because up here we have three of the most important young Republican state leaders in the country. These are gentlemen that are really kind of setting a new path for young conservatives to lead in their respective states. They've been involved with ACC for a very long time, been longtime allies and champions of our cause in the organization, and they've been applying that in very real and practical ways at the state level as elected leaders in their respective states. So I'm really excited to kind of go through a conversation with you guys here. I think the best way to start maybe is to just go down the line and have you quickly introduce yourself, your background with ACC, and then also what you're doing now, and just give a quick overview of who you are and what you do. Sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. So my name is Tex Fisher. I'm a state representative in Ohio. I don't know how many people here are from Ohio. That's great, not enough. But thank you all for coming out here, and I appreciate the invitation being here. So I was actually ACC's national field director for about 3 years, and it's really cool to be back. Go speak quick.
Austin Harris, I'm a state representative from Iowa. I serve on the Natural Resources Committee, the State Government Committee, Appropriations Committee, and the Commerce Committee, and chairman of the Education Appropriations Committee. And first got connected to ACC back in 2021 when I worked for Congresswoman Marionette Miller Meeks as their Deputy Chief of Staff.
It's great to be here. My name is Tyler Clancy. I'm a state representative from Utah. All right. We got Isaiah. I got connected with ACC in college. It was kind of on the tail end there and learning about the great work being done, and then working in public policy. You can't escape the great team of the American Conservation Coalition at the table, leading out on so many key initiatives that are important to states like myself in Utah.
Awesome. Are each of you the youngest state representatives in your respective state? Do I have that right? Yep. Not Austin, but you two are? Well, that's still pretty cool. Thanks for all you guys do. So just a question, maybe we'll start again with you, Tyler, go back down. But a lot of the conversation that people have around these issues happens at the kind of DC level, and people think that that's where everything happens, but the reality is that so much of this also happens at the state level, and I think sometimes that can be overlooked a little bit. So would love to get your thoughts on what the opportunities you see in your state to lead on this look like, and what you've been doing to lean in.
Well, I'm going to quote one of your tweets, Chris. When we passed House Bill 85 in Utah this year, Chris tweeted something to the effect of, turns out you can actually just do things in states. And that's really where I think is so important in all of your states is that it's quite difficult to get in touch sometimes with your DC legislators, and also to get on the docket, even if they do introduce a bill. It's very difficult to try and move those things through DC. But in states across the country, legislators like myself, we want to know what our constituents want. And so for me, representing the youngest district in Utah at Brigham Young University, it was clear that they wanted me to lead out on environmental issues, balancing good environmental stewardship while not being degrowth. And so House Bill 85 was a landmark permitting reform bill that actually just, I think it was Monday, our Department of Environmental Quality announced that we're going to build 7 new permits for energy production in Utah, which I think is huge. And especially as we go out and we're looking to 2x our energy production in Utah by 2030, it's folks like Chris and the team at ACC who are going to help lead the way.
Awesome.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to work in the U.S. House of Representatives for a little while, and now I get to serve in the State House in Iowa. And the biggest difference between the federal and the state system is similar to what Tyler said. You can actually get things done fairly quickly. And Iowa has been a leader from the very beginning when it comes to renewables. We acted fairly early on in the mid-2000s when it came to wind energy, when it came to ethanol. We've implemented policies this year that will help start up renewable aviation fuel industries across the state, which will be very beneficial to the state of Iowa. You know, we produce over 4 billion gallons of ethanol a year. 63% of the energy in Iowa is from wind turbines. And so we've kind of been a leader on that, but we've been very responsive to our constituents and have fairly, for the most part, been able to get things done fairly quickly.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Like, you can actually just do things at the state level, and that's been one of the refreshing parts of being in the legislature. We have a really bad track record on energy policy in Ohio over the last 10 years, unfortunately. We have several prominent former elected officials currently serving prison sentences for a not so great piece of legislation called House Bill 6. So over the first 6 months, really the first 4 months of this last legislative session, we were able to pass a landmark energy reform that repealed the remnants of that terrible policy and is going to put us on a much better track moving forward, because we have a long way to go. It's one small step in the right direction, but the fact that we're able to do something so comprehensive, and I think we only had 3 no votes in the entire House chamber. The bill moved pretty quickly, and it was overall a really good policy. And it was just remarkable to see that we're actually able to do things. And I think at the state level, so much more is actually done and regulated at the state level, particularly when you're talking about energy and public utilities. Those things are almost entirely governed by your state government. And so having good policymakers and the right ideas being kicked around is really important, actually having that impact on day-to-day people.
Yeah, it's almost like the founders created a nation where that was the intended purpose, right? To do things as close to the people as possible. Tex, just to double click with you here, obviously you served on the ACC grassroots team early on, like you helped really build the program that's led to a lot of this stuff. And I'm curious, as you kind of got elected and you're in office now, you're like a full-time legislative session in Ohio, like you're the vice chair of the House of the Natural Resources Committee in Ohio. How are you taking what you learned during your time with ACC and applying it to what you're now doing in government?
So it was actually super helpful, because working at ACC is kind of how I discovered my passion for energy policy specifically. And so being able to hit the ground running with a base level understanding of not just what we have in Ohio as an engaged citizen and a political nerd, but actually understand the ins and outs of the policies and to know what other states are doing. We actually have had a lot of conversations about what Utah's doing in the legislature, particularly some of us younger legislators with an interest in energy. So being able to make these connections, I mean, I run into people all the time. I'll have meetings with them actually during the process of our energy bill, where sit there for like 30 seconds, like, I'm pretty sure we talked on the phone or on Zoom in like 2020 with ACC, and sure enough, we did. So it was an incredibly great experience just to be able to hit the ground running and have a great understanding of policy and have so many great connections, and also great to see so many friendly faces that I have not seen in a few years that are still involved, and it's just great to see how much the organization has grown.
Yeah, and I'd love to go to you, Tyler, on that, since you mentioned you were involved with us in college. And really one of the visions that we have for all of you in this room is, like, we'd love for you to be up on this stage at some point. We'd love for you to be elected to your state house, maybe even to Congress at some point. And really those opportunities come if you just take them. Like, I bet a few years ago, none of you guys thought that necessarily your career path would take this track, but you just took the opportunities that were ahead of you, and getting involved with the right people and just like putting yourself out there is really important to being able to be in the position you are in now. So Tyler, kind of similar question to what I asked Tex, like, how did that inform what you're doing now? I know this permitting bill that you like passed, like, I know the governor wanted to do something and then he deferred to you because yours was better. And like Isaiah went out and he testified on the bill and we helped writing some of it. One of my former intern helped you write the bill. Like ACC's fingerprints was on the whole process. And as a state legislator, you don't have a lot of staff. You don't have no staff, right? So you have to like trust people that you're working with to give you the right information. Tell me a little bit about that kind of like pipeline of trust and how you get things done.
1,000%, and you nailed it. I think if you are here, the number one thing that you ought to be doing is networking. Build that coalition. As you guys, whether you're in college, you're going to graduate, and now everyone's going to disperse and go across the country. You're going to be working for a congresswoman in D.C. and you're going to say, I have a question about this labor issue, but it's someone in this room I guarantee is going to have that be tapped into to those issues. So I think now whatever you want to do in public service, it's building that network, but also learning those grassroots skills that you will if you continue to work for ACC. Can you knock on someone's door and talk to them about the issues that matter to them, right? Anyone can have good opinions about the right issues of the day. You could, retweet the right things or whatever. But those soft, I don't know if those soft or hard skills is the right word, but being able to go out and knock on doors. Can you create a campaign around a certain issue about preserving a park in your neighborhood, and all of those different things, and slowly, those are going to coalesce until when you're in that role in public service and you're tapped into ACC and your network around, that's when I was able to pick up the phone and talk to Chris and Danielle and many others on the ACC team and say, this is our goal, this is what we're trying to do, how do we get there? And we were able to have that specialized talent team, and we nailed it.
Yeah, and Austin, you mentioned that you worked in Congress, and obviously we love Congresswoman Miller Meeks, but it's also a much slower process. It's like you have a lot more kind of dynamics you have to deal with, and to some extent when you're at the state level, it's easier to like relate to your constituents because they're like closer to you, right? So curious like how your experience in the House has informed like what you're doing now, and then kind of similar touching on what Tex and Tyler just said.
Yeah, I think, learned fairly early on in my professional career that if you actually want to get things done, you have to build a coalition of people to be able to do that. So right now in Iowa, we have a debate going on because we've had a few years of drought, and this year we've had a lot of excessive rainfall. Well, that's caused a lot of nitrates to run off into the water, and for example, Des Moines Water Works had to put a lawn watering ban in the metro area for 600,000 people, which they weren't too happy about. Because the nitrate level was so high that their process wasn't able to keep up. And so it's kind of ignited a discussion and debate about what we're going to do next session when we come back in about water quality issues and conservation issues, and what do we do about farm regulations. But nothing's ever going to happen on this if we aren't able to bring people to the table. So, besides being a state legislator, I'm a farmer as well, and I can tell you there's a lot of real friction between conservationists, environmentalist, and the agriculture industry. Iowa's an ag state. A large portion of our economy is based off of ag. And so anything that we want to do on water quality is going to have buy-in from the agricultural community and have farmers involved in that process as well. So, when we come back in next session, we're not going to be able to do anything on that issue as long as the farmers are at the table. So you got to be able to bring people together to get a solution.
Awesome. I want to make sure that we have time for a few questions on the floor, but really quick before we do that, like any kind of 30-second takeaways for anyone in this room that's thinking, how can I be up on this stage? Like what are the steps and the things that they should be thinking about? Tex?
Yeah, I would just say if the opportunity presents itself, don't be afraid to take it. If you knew me before the last year, I would have just laughed in your face if you said I would ever be an elected official, and here I am. So you never really know until the opportunities are right in front of you, and just be open to it.
Absolutely, yeah. You don't want to live a life of regrets. These opportunities don't come open very often. I never thought I would run for office in 2022 when we did redistricting and there was an open seat. I was approached by folks. I was fairly resistant to it. Actually, Congresswoman Miller Meeks encouraged me to do it. But on top of it, I often get asked the question, why you decided to run for office. And there's a lot of reasons why, but it all boils down to this. When it comes to lawmaking, when it comes to policy making, you're either two things. You're either on the table or you're at the table. And I wanted my part of the state to be at the table.
Yeah, phenomenal advice. I would just add to it, just hard work and do everything that you do to the best of your ability. Whatever role that you're serving in right now, whatever you do post-college, be the best at that. Don't leave any stone unturned, because ultimately that's going to be your resume, essentially. Not only are people going to see what you've accomplished, but do the people that you worked side by side with, do they trust you? And if you build that reputation of being a really hard worker and someone who does everything to the best of his or her ability, the sky's the limit. And when those opportunities come, you're going to be ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, I love that. And it reminds me of a quote that Teddy Roosevelt had, which is that the best advice he had was for anyone to do whatever job they're doing in that moment as if it were their last job ever. And if you keep doing that, you're going to achieve amazing things. So with that, any questions on the floor? Don't be shy.
Before any questions, I do want to thank the Rainey Center for Public Policy for sponsoring the panel, and our ACC Action Board member, Sarah Hunt, for her support. You can all raise your hands now. I'll come chase you.
Thank you. Is this all great? I apologize, I forgot your name. This is for the gentleman from Utah. Obviously, Utah in the past few months has been in the news in the conservation world. Senator Lee has really championed this public land sell-off. I'm not going to ask you to speak good or bad about someone in your state, but what is kind of the sentiment around that been? Because even in the Republican Party, the idea to sell off a lot of public land has really kind of formed a schism in the conservation industry. What have you seen in your state and kind of in the West, where a lot more of that public land is?
Such a good question. And also, that you're not alone. There's always like 500 Tylers in any given room. And so, yes, very easily forgettable. It's a great question. Chris and I had a conversation about this. I think that you're seeing two things. One is that Republicans, we've always been skeptical of government managing something. But I also think our generation in particular, with the rise of these mega corporations like BlackRock and other places, we're also a little skeptical of centralized private power as well. And so that's something I don't think you've seen in the Republican Party, and that's why I think you saw quite the backlash come from particularly the younger wing of the Republican Party to Senator Lee's recognition. I can tell you in Utah, there's absolutely room for reform. We have national parks that have 2 park rangers, and we can't do anything about it as a state to help increase the conservation, whether it's wildlife management or actually just the enjoyment of the park. So there's room to be tweaked there. But to your point, I think it resonates with everyone that our lands, we have to have access. The public has to have access, and we don't need to develop every inch of our beautiful, amazing natural resources. There's a reason people want to live in Utah. There's a reason people want to come and visit Utah, and we can never forget that, and we can't lose that why. So that's kind of I think a little bit speaks to both of it. I think the really nuanced conversations are hard to have on Twitter, and a lot of it gets down to the granular local level, which is why I think you see some of that conversation.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Really appreciate it. I hate the federal government, and I hate... Can I get an amen? But I think that's what's on the news. That's what we see. We're obviously very excited about the Make America Beautiful Again executive order. But you guys decided to run at the state level, and then I'm sure you're at neighborhood meetings and city council meetings. Like, can you talk about to these folks what it looks like to really get in the weeds at the local and state level?
Sure. So you are spot on. You do go to a lot of community meetings. I also hate the federal government, so 2 for 2. Sometimes it can be a little trying because you'll get calls. Somebody's complaining. There's a cell tower going up in my neighborhood, and I don't want to look at it. And I understand that. Somebody puts their trash cans out too early. Well, that's not a state issue, but I'm getting called about it. So some of those things, it's a lot of time is spent kind of explaining things. But I think people generally just want to feel like they're being heard. And I can't do anything about the cell tower. I can't do anything about your neighbor's trash cans. But a lot of times you just sit there and listen. People walk away feeling a whole lot better about the situation. And my honest answer is to why I would choose to be at the state level is I can't stand being in Washington, D.C. I can't stand the traffic. I can't stand a lot of things about that place, and I would never want to live there. But I also, to the point we made earlier, you can actually do a lot more. I think you can be impactful at the state level. The number of bills that Congress passes every year, pretty small, and most of them are not good. And we pass a whole lot of things at the state level, and probably a smaller percentage of them, I would say, are not good. So that's why I like state government a little bit better.
Yeah, I concur. I hate the federal government too. A lot of folks think that our job is, most legislative sessions are part-time. So in Iowa, we're only in session January to April. Most people don't realize that we actually have another job outside of the legislative job, but also we do a lot more than just work during the legislative session. I get emails, phone calls all the time from folks who are having issues navigating the state government, sometimes the federal government. Some people don't realize there's a difference between their federal congressperson and our state representative. But you get a lot of questions and inquiries on that. And being able to help folks navigate through the bureaucracy and be able to help them get ahead a little bit in life helps restore their faith that people are actually listening, that elected officials are actually responsive to it. Now, sometimes you get some very odd emails. I mean, you get some that are having issues with driver's license. I had one person contact me complaining that their insurance bill went up by $100, and it's like, what the hell am I supposed to do about that? And so, but at the state level, you really get to have a one-on-one interaction with your constituents. And it not only makes them feel good, but selfishly makes you feel good too, that you in some way, you're helping them ahead in life.
Just add one last thing as well, is that if you're here today, it's because you care about the issues that impact our communities and our neighborhoods. And sometimes it's hard, I think if the state of Washington was using slave labor on energy products, we would never accept and just say, well, that's the comparative advantage of Washington. But yet that's what we do with China as we ship in their critical minerals with literal children working in these types of things. That can be very daunting to take on these heavy, heavy challenges. But I'll tell you, at the state and local level, you really can move the needle. Because every single job you create in Colorado or Nebraska or California that's on an energy plant, that's food on an American's table, we're showing that we want to push back on some of these outrageous policies across the country. And so when you get down to this really local level, you can really move the needle on so many of these issues that really matter to you, keep you up at night, whether it's hunger, whether it's energy, all of the above. And so don't lose hope. You can't put all the problems and the weight of the world on your shoulders and expect to keep going. Just focus on the things you can do right in front of you right here, and you've got a great place to start if you're at this conference.
Awesome. Thank you. Just a few closing thoughts before. Oh, we got one more question?
Or
One more?
if you
Oh,
want
go
to.
for it.
Does anyone have
Hello, I'm from New Jersey. My name is Aniket Chaffin. I have one question. Like, whenever we talk about climate change, we often talk about regulation or not overusing or how businesses affect climate change. And typically, like Republicans, we talk more about innovation or market-driven strategies. So when someone asks you this kind of questions, how do you reply?
Could you repeat that again?
Yeah, sure. So like when you talk about climate change, like now at the summit, we're talking more about market-driven solutions or innovation, like or developing new technologies or strategies. But oftentimes when we talk about climate change, we go against like don't overuse a lot of stuff, don't overuse this, or more about like, we often talk less about innovation, right? In different protests when you see about climate activists talking. But over here, we are talking more about innovation. So when in your states, when people ask you questions about climate change and when you have its instance on innovation, how do you reply?
Innovation over regulation.
Yeah, I think I'm going to tie it back into a little bit more Iowa focused. Earlier I talked about what we're going to do about water quality issues here, and it applies to this as well, I think. We can have a top-down mandate from government, and we know how well that's probably going to work out. We've seen it happen in other industries across the country, across the world. But what we want to do is create financial incentives for industries, for businesses, for farmers to be able to adopt new practices when it comes to conservation, when it comes to better energy practices. And so I think that one of the things I appreciate about ACC compared to other organizations is that they're offering that voice, they're offering that alternative to the debate that's going on in this country. So if we once again want to bring people to the table and actually get something done, it's not going to be through mandates and regulations. We have to focus on innovation. That's how we built one of the greatest economies in the world. It wasn't through over-the-top government mandates. It was by pushing free market principles and ideals.
Yeah, and in my experience too, given the area I represent, so I represent the Youngstown, Ohio area. We have a rich history of industry and manufacturing, and a lot of times when you talk about climate issues and environmental regulations, a lot of people in my area don't have a positive reaction to that, because when they think of, EPA puts down a mandate, they think, well, that's going to shut down, one of our plants. They see the negative impacts of those types of heavy-handed DC climate-driven regulations. And so when you try to frame the issue as talking about innovation, it's like, this is something that could open up our factories again. This is something that could put people to work, and that you get a much better response from people in my part of the state talking about it from that perspective than you would from regulations.
And listen, the sign is outside. Make it in America. When President Biden canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, we didn't just put thousands of Americans out of work. We shipped in the same amount of oil from Russia. We did it by boat, we did it by train, and then they drove it through New York across the country. And so a lot of these are false choices. And quite honestly, it's just a degrowth mindset. It's this idea that we just need to stop human life, that you should only have 2 kids, all of these garbage beliefs that I think they mask it through the environmental issues. And so ultimately, we can make it in America so much cleaner and more ethically than anywhere else in the country. When we put Americans to work, we all win, and that's the future I want to live in.
Great. Couldn't put it better myself. So just a few closing thoughts here. The first thing, and I mentioned this while we were having the panel discussion, but these really are 3 of the most impressive young leaders across the country. And it's a huge honor not just to have them involved with the organization, with ACC, but also they're here to spend the weekend with you guys as well. So please feel free to go up to them while you're playing volleyball or whatever, to ask them questions, ask them about their careers, ask them if you want to have them speak on your campus. I'm sure they'd love to do that. Just go up and spend time with them, and it's pretty rare that you get to do that with people that are really leading the way across the country. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we have a session later today or tomorrow, I forget when exactly, but it's with Run Gen Z, and the goal is to help you guys figure out how you can run for office. I just know there are people in this room that are going to go work in their state legislature, they're going to go work in Congress, and we want to be a resource to you, we want to help you do that. So definitely go to that session if that's something that you're interested in. And then the final thing is I'll mention Casey introduced herself earlier. She runs our Young Professional Program. If you're entering the end of college, you're already out of college, and these are things that you're thinking about, you want to work in a state house, you want to work in Congress, again, we want to be a resource, and Casey's going to be the person that can guide you in that right direction, because you guys are going to be up on this stage one day. You're going to be on even larger stages, as will you guys, and we want to be a part of that. So thank you all again so much, and have a great rest of your day.